All right, this is the second part of lesson 8.1. So we just looked at question 4, and we're going to look at question 5 now. So we've got coordinates here. I always like to personally type in all the first numbers, as in the x coordinates. I always find that a little easier to do. And we just go through one at a time. You can obviously follow along on your screen too. 5 and 7. And then you do the same for each of the y values as well. Now, I'm actually going to skip to the slide because I've actually already typed it in. And we actually have a list of equations. So this is a different approach. So basically, here are my answers. And I could type in that equation, but what happens if we don't remember that equation? So I'm going to get rid of it. Now, I've got each of those 4 answers, and we can look at the picture to see how close each of the equations is. So that's kind of not very good. All of these are kind of above the curve, so I don't think that one's too good. But let's take a look what else we have. That, I would say, looks possibly even worse, I would say. I think there's a typo here. Let me just fix that. Yeah, once again, that looks a little bit off. That doesn't quite look as good. Let's check this. There we go. You can see the last one. This one goes through perfectly. So this is another idea. If we have multiple choice, we can just type in each answer and take a look to see which is the closest to the actual answer, rather than having to type in that whole equation if we don't remember what it is. Okay. All right. So let's move on to our next question. So we got our table here. Use the calculator to find the curve of best fit again. So this is a basketball star asked to coach the video her shot. So if you imagine a basketball flying through the air as you're shooting, it's going to go up, but then it's going to come back down again as it heads towards the basket. And you can see from my points here, kind of steep a little bit here, and it comes downwards. So my line, my curve, not perfect for this part, but certainly it's getting fairly close to all these values. And then you could write out the equation. Negative 7.81 x squared plus 10.57x plus 10.94. If I'm rounding, if you go into 2 decimal places, you can normally get away with just truncating, which means just take the numbers as it is. Whoops, sorry here. So negative 7.80 x squared, 10.56x plus 10.93. And that should be good enough for you to figure out the answer. Use your equation to make a prediction for the height of the ball 1.7 seconds after release. Now, technically, this is really 8.2, but as we're heading towards the end, we're going to start looking at this type of question. So notice seconds is your x value. So if we go back to this equation here, we can actually make that prediction. If we type in x equals 1.7, it will actually look where it crosses with the graph, and then you can make a prediction. So 6.34. And I just don't remember what the unit was for this. Oh, feet. So you can use that to figure out what that answer would be as well. Let's move on to the next one. I think this also has a little prediction here. The table shows the relationship between the speed of a vehicle and its stopping distance in feet. So obviously the faster we go, it takes longer to stop. And I have this one typed in as well. There we go. There's our values. There's our speeds. I typed in the equation. And you can see from here, you've got A, B, and C. Notice also, this is pretty good here. You can see that most of these points seem to lie pretty well on this curve here. So the equation will be 0.13 x squared minus 6.53 or 6.54 x plus 102.45. And then let's go back to that prediction though. Use this to predict what vehicle is traveling if the stopping distance is 88 feet. Now notice this time it's not the x value, it's the y value. So this time when we go to our equation, we would actually type in y equals 88. And actually there's 2 answers for this question. It could either be 2.32 miles an hour, or it could be 47. Now I think the problem with this one is notice these points don't actually start until we get to 30. So I'm going to say it's more likely to be this. Perhaps this function is not valid for every value of x, but certainly the ones after 30 is pretty good. So I'm going to pick this one here. I'm going to pick the 47. Seems unlikely a car going at 2 miles an hour would take 88 feet to stop. That would seem like not a very common sense answer. So sometimes we do have to interpret just a little bit while we're answering these types of questions. All right, as we head to the end, we're going to look at some slightly different questions. These are previous SOL questions. Which table of value represents the rule shown? The square of the sum of x and 5 is equal to y. Now I'm going to go to this one here. First of all, I have to know exactly what that rule is. So the square of, so I know square, sum I know means x plus 5. So I got to do the square of that is equal to y. So I typed in that equation, and actually what I did is I copied in each of these little tables. I actually typed in all 4 tables. Now, unfortunately, I'm a little bit colorblind, which is probably not perfectly helpful for this one. So I'm kind of confused right now. Is it this one or is it this one? I can see it's not this one because that's these 2 dots here. And I can see it's not the black one because they're there. So if I'm not sure which one it is, obviously everyone else probably besides me is, you can click on this point and you can see it says 364. And that point there says 481. So I could actually figure out exactly which of the answers it is. All right, let me go to the last question. This time, 1 less than 1/4 the square of a number of x is y. Actually, they put equals y on the end here, so we don't need to do that part. We just got to do this one. So 1 less, I know means we're going to subtract 1 from something. What are we subtracting it from? 1/4, so 1/4. Push the arrow across. The square of a number, so x squared. And then we already did the 1 less part is equal to y. And it'll draw a picture for us. And it says, plot 3 points on the grids that are represented by this rule. Each point must have coordinates that are integers. Now, that one seems a pretty obvious one. The x-intercepts, and it looks like the y-intercept looks like it goes through a whole number as well. Now, I'm actually going to go to the actual picture itself. If we do this on Desmos, we can see this much clearer where it actually goes through points. Like I can't pick this one here because it doesn't go through the corner of a square. And along the side here, I actually put up some of the different answers that you could have had. And you could have had some bigger ones as well. I think the table actually, the axes actually go from -10 to 10 on yours as well. So main thing for today then is remembering the rule that we're going to use when we're typing in. We're using that Y1 cedilla. Let me get back to it. I've probably got to go all the way to the start though. MX1, sorry, AX1, AX1 squared plus BX plus C. There we go. I just saw it on that slide here. So when we see that quadratic shape, and that's going to be everything in this test because that's what this unit is, we're going to enter this formula and then we can actually get through this. As you're actually typing them into Desmos, while you're actually doing certain questions, you could actually just delete everything except for the rule. Once you've got the rule typed in one time, you could actually just go and add in the table each time. The only problem is it does change it to x2. So I think you have to change it to x1 and y1. But then from here, you can just enter the table. And once you've got your values typed in, notice you do actually have your equation here straight away. Whoops. Just so you can see some of the points that are actually plotted, etc., etc. So that's a useful tool. If you can remember it once, then if you're doing the next question, you can actually just, I guess, type over the top of the table as well. Whatever the next question is, you could just literally type over the top as well. So I wouldn't always reset every question if you're actually doing it, but that might be a good little tactic to use as well. All right, this time that does conclude this video for lesson 8.1.